Good afternoon slash good night, beautiful people. Headed back home on this Wednesday night. Had a pretty good day at work. Pretty steady, pretty busy, but nothing too extreme. But headed home. Just was watching some comedian stand up. Well, listening to it more so on the drive home, and then I got to my dead spot like I do every drive, and decided to go ahead and do my recording now. But I know on the morning video I was talking about how some of the, like, if you're single as a male nurse, you can get into a lot of trouble very easily, or even if you're married, because some people don't even covet the marriage. Like, you can be married and be faithful to your spouse, and even tell some people, like, oh, hey, I'm married, and they don't give a crap. I mean, some people, that makes them want you even more for some reason. But I had talked about that in the previous video for this morning before I went to the gym. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the things going outside of the gym and outside of my work or nurse practicing, because I feel like I talk about those kind of three areas a lot, which admittedly is the main three areas that I'm constantly in life, and I don't talk too much about the kids and my wife and stuff like that. I'll mention them every once in a while and stuff like that in videos, but for the most part, I kind of keep that side of things a little bit more private. And I'm a lot more open with my gym, my weight loss, my job, my nurse practitioner, plans for the future, the real estate. I'm a lot more of an open book on those things versus my family. I kind of keep somewhat private. Not entirely private. I don't mind admitting to stuff, but I don't put it out there. But I was going to say, I feel like as parents, you're the steward for change for the next generation overall. And I was raised without my dad in the picture. I remember one of my earlier videos I talked about, my alcoholic, I guess you could say, granddad, who was like a sexually abuser and alcoholic and kind of semi-physically abusive. I've had stepdads that were physically abusive. So, I never had that positive male role model at all, or grew up with a real father figure. And, obviously for me, being a dad now, it's kind of hard in a way, because I don't have someone that I can turn to ask questions on, like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, what am I supposed to do as a husband, as a father? I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants, as they say. And admittedly, a lot of times it's difficult to know that you're doing the right thing. And that is definitely something I struggle with, because, for instance, like with my son, I want him to be a man, but at the same time, I'm like, dang, I don't want to be so hard on him that he doesn't view me as someone he can come to, if that makes sense. So it's like, where do you find that fine line, and he's 5 now, so it's like I'm having to reinforce, basically, kind of like where that line is, where it's like, hey, we can be fun, we can goof off, we can have a good time up to this point. Like, you don't cross these boundaries, So, and it's a difficult thing at times. And then with my daughter, it's like a different gear, because My son, I have certain expectations of him that I don't have for my daughter, and vice versa. Like, they do have some expectations in general speaking. Like, I want them to be a good person. Preferably, I would want them to be Christian to some degree because, that's my faith, that's my religion overall. Now, whether they choose, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, or non-denomination, which is what I consider myself, past that part, I'm not too hung up on it. Obviously, I'm married to, my wife is Mexican, like legit from Mexico. They moved here to the United States when she was 5. So I don't get hung up on the race card. So, I mean, if my daughter, my son, they bring home a Mexican, a black girl, a Vietnamese, Filipino, I'm not necessarily going to be upset about that at all as far as the race. It would be more so about how they treat my kids and how they are as a person. And because I work with, honestly, in Warner Robins Macon, I probably work with more black nurses and patient care techs than I do any other race. And some of the best colleagues I have that I'm cutting up joking with, like one that comes to mind is Misha. And me and her joke cut up. Like, I would hang out with her on the weekends with the families, get the families together, everything. Like, if my son, like, she don't have no kids, but like, if my son or my daughter was to get with one of her kids, I know it would be all right, kind of thing. So it's like you kind of get to know the people or the person, and you kind of play it by that more so than the color. I never got hung up that even in my own dating. So, but now I will say, in general speaking, let's say no matter what race it is, whether it's black, white, purple, whatever, I want my kids to understand, like, hey, pay attention to, like, when you go out on a date, pay attention to how they treat the waiter, or pay attention to how they treat that stranger on the street, because it's those kind of things that you pay attention to, and it'll show you kind of their morals and their beliefs and their character and stuff like that. Like, for me, for instance, I come from nothing. First one to graduate high school, I worked from EMT and combat medic all the way up to, by the time I finished this degree, as a nurse practitioner. So, I mean, I started at the very, very bottom as a EMTB, which is the basic level of an EMT, and then an EMTI, and then paramedic, and then RN, and so forth. So it's like, I still to this day, like, every day that I work, and we have an EVS lady, I don't even know her, she says her name's Sunshine, so I just call her Sunshine. That might actually be her name, but that's what she goes by, so that's what I call her. And great lady. I talk to her every time. She's like, good morning, I'm like, good morning, Sunshine, da 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 da. Talk to her. Same with like my techs, LPNs. It's like, no matter my position, I've never placed myself where I feel like I'm better than someone else. And I think that has a lot to do with, I come from the bottom and worked my way to where I am. So, like, I've been in those positions. Like, I started working in tobacco fields when I was like 10 years old. So, I mean, I worked in the fields. I worked at like as a what is it called? As a food prepper for Pizza Hut for like 6 months. I hated that job. I wound up going back to the fields. I was like, this job sucks. But I was working as like a food prepper for a little bit. I joined the Army. Like, I went into the Army as a E1. Like, I didn't even get like fast track promoted. Like, I literally started as like the private, where you don't even have a rank on your chest. Like, I was a fuzzy, and worked my way all the way up to like E4 promotable. Just my points were maxed out whenever it was around that time frame. That's why I didn't get the sergeant. And like uh, every kind of like job position kind of thing I've ever had, I've always started at that grunt level, so to speak, and kind of maneuvered and worked my way to like higher positions. And I realized by doing so, I don't put myself higher than other people, but also I realized, like, hey, without the tech that's taking the bottles and the blood sugars and helping the patient to the bathroom and all this other stuff, the nurse can't do their job. The nurse can't do their job. The doctor can't do his job. The doctor can't do his job. The patient's not going to get better. They're not going to get out of the hospital. So the administrators can't do their job. So it's like, in a way, it all goes back down to that basic patient care tech doing the vitals, helping them to the bathroom. Like, it's just as important, because if that one piece of the machine fails, the whole machine like either completely halts or it slows down to a point that it functionally is not working properly. And when you start looking at things that way in multiple sectors in life, you realize, like, oh, everything, the small things matter, basically. So I would much rather teach my kids that kind of lesson and have them look at their partners or their friends or what they want to do in life from that kind of mindset. Ultimately, as a parent, that's what I want to teach them, is to kind of like, hey, you're not better than anybody, but also you need to look at everything in life at multiple levels. Like, you should be not only looking where you are, but you should be looking at the level up and the level down from you. Because the level up from you is, figure out if that's where you want to be, or like and if it is, what are the things I need to do to get to that level. You look at the level that you're on to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do to the best of your ability, and make sure you're mastering the level that you're already on. And then you look back to the level that's below you to see if there's anything that you can do to help that level get to the level that you're already at. Or you try to see what that level provides that enables you to have your level. And by looking at things in that leveled approach, so to speak, I feel like it makes you a better human being in a way. But it's like, so I would rather my kids kind of look at that. So it's like the struggle that I'm having is obviously, how do you do that? How do you manage that? How do you teach such a like a complex concept and teach them how to apply it to not only their work, but their marriage, their spouse, their friend? Like, how do you teach to utilize such a complex concept, if that makes sense? Like, even trying to explain it on this video is kind of rough for me in a way. But it's things like that I kind of struggle with. And then, that's like a big themed items that I'm giving an example of. But there'll be small things too. Like, right now, my son, his numbers, he's 5, he's into kindergarten, so he's doing his letters, he's doing his numbers, he's doing like, spelling some words. So his numbers, he kind of gets pretty good, but the spelling words, he kind of struggles on. And I feel like at times he kind of like, if he starts struggling, it's like he wants to kind of give up, and I'm trying to get him out of that habit of like giving up on it. And I'm like, oh, like, hey, just breathe, take a few deep breaths, try your best, at least try to guess. Like, don't just say I don't know. Like, try to guess at least, like put forth the effort. But it's like, how do I do that without coming off like an a-hole to my kid, in a way? And like, that's more of a thing that we're dealing with now. And admittedly, my wife deals with a lot more of that with the kids than I do, because with her being a stay-at-home mom, she takes care of like 99% of everything, and then I get the little 1% chunk, which is really nice, in a way. But at the same time, it does make me feel bad as a dad at times too, because I'm like, dang, like I want to help, but at the same time, what she's doing is already kind of working, and I don't want to screw it up because maybe I say something differently, and then they give you that classic line, well, that's not how mommy does it. And you're like, oh, well, how does mommy do it? And you're trying to somewhat give them the same kind of structured format that your wife's doing, and it just becomes a little interesting. And my son last week or 2 weeks ago, he was kind of struggling with some words and stuff, and my wife, you can tell she's getting frustrated, so I tried to tag in, get him to stand up. I'm like, all right, stand up, shake it off, like trying to get him to somewhat kind of like reset, and then let me try to teach him in a way. And I didn't realize that even though he's in kindergarten, he gets freaking homework, which I think is absurd. He was supposed to like fill out the paper with the words, like his spell words. So I was sitting there working with him, and I was like spreading his words out, and I'm like, okay, find, spin. And he's like, oh, right here. And he's pointing it out because I have like all the words like splayed out on the table, and kind of like I would say the word and he has to find it. And he was doing that, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, that's spin. Take it off. Where's this word? He points to it. I take it off, kind of thing, until we get down to the very last word, and he did it great. So I'm like, okay, so your words, like which one's which. So that's not where we're struggling. So where are we struggling? This guy's on the whole wrong side of the road. I don't know what he is trying to do. But anyways, so I'm like, okay, it's not the word that you're struggling with. It must just be the spelling. Come to find out, that's exactly what it is. So then I'm trying to like break it down, like spin. I'm like, suh. And he's like, CS. I'm like, okay, that's not really working for him. All right, spin, in, pin, and then of course he writes PEN instead of PIN, because it's kind of the similar. It's kind of what sucks about English language, and stuff sounds alike a lot of times. But then I'm sitting there working with him, like, no, SPIN, spin, like trying to help him, and it's like he gets it, but he's not getting it. And then I'm like, man, like, what do I do? And then that goes back to what I was saying. I don't have that that kind of person that I can, call up, like, hey, Dad, like, I'm trying to help Alex with his words. Like, it's just, he's struggling with this. Like, what can I do? Like, I don't have that. I don't have that lifeline, so to speak, or, I didn't get to grow up. Like, I'm trying to get into hunting, which is something I've always wanted to do, but I never, got a chance much as a kid. I did a lot of fishing, and I did a little bit of hunting as far as like hog hunting, and went like rattlesnake hunting and stuff as a teenager with some of my friends. But I didn't grow up hunting with my dad or grandpa or any of that kind of stuff like a lot of people in South Georgia, like where I live. So a lot of the guys that I know, I mean, they've been hunting since they were like 6, 7 years old. And I'm like, dang, I kind of want to do that with my kids, like with my son and my daughter and everything. I want to take them out hunting and do all these things with them. And I'm like, heck, I don't even really know. Like, I know how to do it, but at the same time, I don't know how to teach it in a way, because like I kind of was just self-taught. Like everything in my entire life has been self-taught. So it's like I never had anyone really like teach me those kind of things. I just, stumbled my way to success. And it makes it a little bit hard and to do a lot of these things. And then of course, one thing I'm pretty sure I'm going to do probably when I finish the nurse practitioner and my son will be 6, my daughter will be 5. At that point, I'm probably going to sign them both up for like MMA of some kind, whether it be like karate, jiu-jitsu, or actually just MMA, kickboxing. Because I want them to learn self-defense, and I think martial arts in general. Like I did wrestling a lot, regularly all the way up to high school, and I felt like that gave me a lot of my perseverance, my never quit attitude, my stumble my way to success kind of mantra. And then the military just honed and sharpened that even more. And I think that'll be good for both the kids. Plus it teaches them self-defense, so people don't like bully them and stuff in life. And I will say, like, for a lot of the parents that think, like, oh, I don't want to put my kid in like MMA or anything like that, I think it's because they're like, oh, I don't want my kid to be like a jock or da 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 da. Like, one of the biggest principles of any martial art is like discipline and control. Like, so they teach a lot of that. Also, it's a self-defense thing. So, for instance, like, I know how, being that I did wrestling, I did combatives in the military, I'm not going to sit there and lie that I could probably beat XYZ person in a fight, but I feel fairly confident that I could defend myself against most people to a certain degree. So it's like, okay, I don't mind getting into certain situations a little bit more, and I'm willing to do certain things that other people might not be willing to do, because I know at the end of the day I can handle myself and handle the situation if it kind of goes a little sideways. So it gives you a little bit of an air of a confidence where you can do more things, because you're not worried about like, oh crap, if this guy punches me in the mouth because I'm about to fire him or XYZ thing, I don't even know what I would do. And it's like, oh, well, I mean, if you see somebody load up, because most people don't really know how to, a lot of people telegraph punches, so they kind of like load it up and rock it back. So I mean, you can kind of, if you've done any kind of like combatives or MMA or wrestling or anything, you can tell when you know what loading up means. Like, so you know it's coming. And if you've trained any of that, you'll be like, oh, this guy's about to hit me. Like, it'll trigger in your mind like, oh, this guy's about to try to hit me. I need to do X, Y, Z. Obviously different punches, you would do different things. So it's like, you've already it's kind of like once you've been punched in the face a couple times or wrestled around on the mat a couple times, it's not new to you. So you don't have that like somewhat panic. Like the first time you ever get punched in the face, no matter like what age you are, you're going to have like this initial shock, no matter who you are. If you've never been punched and you get punched like in a real fight, you're going to have that initial shock of like, oh crap, what just happened? And they're probably going to tag you probably like 2-3 more times before you really register in your brain what's going on and come up with a formula in your brain to react. And by then, I mean, they might have tagged you 3 times, and I mean, if they kind of even borderline know what the heck they're doing, you know, that you're already fighting a losing battle at that point. Especially if they're like bigger than you or more trained than you or anything like that. So I definitely want to get my kids in something for self-defense for that reason. I don't want them to be a victim, is the way I word it. Like, I don't want my kids to bully other kids or anything like that, but I also don't want to raise a victim that, you know, the boo-hoo, I can't defend myself little kid that turns into an adult that can't handle his life or her life. And yes, this doesn't only go for my son. This goes, you know, for my daughter too. Like, I'm putting her in it too, because I mean, there's creepy guys out there. There's, you know, girls that'll try to start crap. You know, there's, you know, it's just as hard for females out there as it is guys. I mean, guys, it's a little bit more physical, I would say, whereas with females, in general speaking, it's a little bit more of like that that emotional or psychological warfare, a little bit more so. I'm not saying it's always like that, but generally that's kind of the thing. Guys are usually a bit more physical, and females are a little bit more psychological and emotional, with the kind of like abuse and issues and stuff like that. So, but I still realize, like, hey, she's probably going to face some kind of physical threat at some point in her life, so I'd rather her go ahead and learn how to defend herself. And, you know, I'm not hoping that it happens, but the likelihood of her living on Earth for, you know, 70 to 100 years and her never getting into any physical confrontation ever her entire life, I'm not really liking my odds. Like, I feel like at some point, if not multiple points, she's going to get into some kind of physical altercation. Whether that be like spouse, boyfriend, some girl, high school drama, you know, maybe she's on like a gymnastics team and the opposing team is trying to be super competitive and pushes her, and, you know, like stuff like that. I mean, the likelihood of her having some kind of physical confrontation is very, very high before she dies. So I would much rather her know how to defend herself. And I feel like the likelihood of a confrontation for my son is probably double that of my daughter's. So obviously him being in it is equally important in a way, but at the same time I realize, like, he'll probably have more confrontations because he's a guy rather than her, just because of how guys are with testosterone and everything else, especially once he gets in like middle school and high school. Admittedly, that's pretty much when I had most of my fights, was in like 8th to 10th grade. That was pretty much like all of my fights during school, was between 8th and 10th grade. By the time I got to 11th grade, like, there was no more fights. Prior to 8th grade, there was never really any fights. So it was like from 8th to 10th grade, and that's like peak testosterone time frame for guys. And then, you know, you get in the girlfriends, and then the girlfriend winds up talking to this guy. Then you got to go fight that guy to show you're a big macho man, or, you know, someone tries to bully you a little bit, and then you got to stand up to the bully. And, you know, but by the time you get to 10th grade, I mean, you know, you're kind of getting out of that phase as a boy, in my opinion. And, you know, maybe that's not everybody's experience. Everybody's experience is a little different, but that was definitely mine growing up in South Georgia. And, you know, a lot of these boys are country fred farm boys, so they are a very rough and tumble lot. So you got to be very rough and tumble yourself. And then even when I got in the Army, I mean, I got into a few confrontations in the Army. And I ain't gonna lie, I mean, I got my ass whooped once, like, pretty handedly. Like, which I kind of knew going into it. I pretty much kind of knew I was going to get my ass whooped. I mean, I won't be honest. But I was like, all right, I might lose this, but I'm throwing. Like, I ain't just going to stand here. So, I mean, I gave him some licks, but, I mean, I wound up losing that one. And admittedly, that was the only, not trying to be, like, braggadocious or anything, but that was the only kind of fight I, like, for sure lost ever. But I didn't really fight too much. But most of the other fights, I mean, like I said, I had done wrestling from, like, rec league all the way up to high school. And most of the people that were, like, fighting me, like, 8th grade through 10th grade, they were just, had way too much testosterone and was just trying to show off or whatever. And didn't know what they were doing, so they would try to throw, like, a wild punch. I'd basically duck it, do a single leg trip, take them down to the ground, get the mount, and just ground and pound them. And they didn't even know how to react because they had never really wrestled, and they didn't even know how to, like, control their hips. They didn't know how to, like, transition. They didn't know how to pivot or anything, like, with the ground game, so to speak. So, I mean, it was like I could just have my way in the fight once it got to the ground because, I mean, they had never dealt with any of that. Which, I mean, admittedly, I wrestled, so that was kind of like my bread and butter, was to take people down and then transition to a better position and then just kind of have my way. If you kind of want to see that style of fighting, like, exemplified to perfection, just go to UFC and look up Khabib Nurmagomedov, who was the only retired fighter out of the UFC that never lost a round ever in his career. And, I mean, that was his style of fighting. I mean, he would just maul you. Like, he would take you down and just maul you with his ground and pound and wrestling. And, like, nobody could beat his wrestling in the UFC. And, I mean, you're talking about professional fighters. So, I mean, he exemplified it for sure. There's a few people, other good people that do it good, but, I mean, he was definitely the one that exuded that style. And everybody knew it, but you just couldn't stop him because he was just that good. So the one that I lost, admittedly, we became best friends almost afterwards. I don't even remember what happened, but it was just argument. He pushed me, and I was like, hey, I basically told him, like, hey, I ain't no little bitch, don't start nothing with me. Like, basically kind of letting him know, like, hey, I'm not going to let you just push me around. And then when I did that, he went to push me again, and I, like, kind of just positioned myself, and basically I kind of, like, shifted to the left, which is a wrestling technique usually for, like, a double leg. Like, if someone goes to push you or, like, punch, you would pivot to one side and try to trap their hips and do a double leg or a single leg or a trip. So I kind of did that maneuver. Well, lo and behold, I mean, he was bigger than me. I mean, his nickname was Tank. He was like 6'2", 250, and built like a freaking brick house. And, you know, I was just thinking, like, he's a bodybuilder, no big deal kind of thing. Yeah, no, he had also wrestled. So he quickly realized what I was doing and repositioned his hips and everything and scrambled when I went for it. So we wound up standing back up. I was a little bit faster than him. I ducked like a wild hook that he kind of threw, and I realized, like, okay, he's not a boxer. He was a wrestler too. So I was thinking, like, okay, I'm not going to out-wrestle this guy because, I mean, he clearly just out-wrestled me a little bit. So I was like, my best bet is to try to stand up. And my stand-up was a little bit better, but he finally, like, I tagged him like maybe 3-4 times with good ones and was kind of dodging and weaving, but he eventually got me with one that kind of rocked me, stumbled me back, and then as soon as I stumbled back and my head kind of rocked back, he went for a double leg, like in wrestling, took me to the ground. And once he got on top of me, like I couldn't get him off of me, but I was still kind of defending myself. So I was defending myself so I didn't get hurt, but at the same time, it was like I couldn't position my hips and everything in a way to like really buck and transition to a better position for myself. And eventually, because I couldn't, I just wound up going into like a full guard and trapping both of his arms so he couldn't really hit me, and he just kind of got stuck. So then, in a way, he won because he was in the dominant position, so to speak. But at the same time, he couldn't really do any real damage because I had a full guard tie up on him, and I had like both of his arms trapped underneath my arms in the armpits and was like sucked in, so he couldn't get any force for anything, any significant shot he was trying to do. But I still lost. Like, it wasn't like a mortifying one-sided thing, but I definitely still lost. But I say all that because, I want my kids to be able to defend themselves, even if they're in a situation like that. I mean, if I had never wrestled, never got into a fight, and, 6'2", 250 tank threw a haymaker, and I didn't know how to react to it, I mean, he probably would have just laid me out and just beat the ever living hell out of me because I didn't know what I was doing. And that's the thing, is I don't want my kids to be in a situation like that because I didn't put them in, some MMA or, something to learn how to defend themselves. But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to highlight, one of the biggest struggles. I don't talk about it too much. And it's an overarching theme. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I want to teach them that leveled, systematic approach of thinking in a way. I want to, help with like their school, but not be so overbearing. I want to, I want them to learn how to be self-reliant in a way, but I still want them to know, like, hey, daddy's here if you need him, but I don't want them to be dependent on me as they get older either. And, and I also, with like my daughter, I want her to see me as like the way I treat my wife, like her mom. And, I want to buy her like little flowers and show her like, hey, this is the way a man should take you out on a date. Like, a man should treat you the way that I treat your mom, like buy her flowers kind of sporadically, show her love and affection, let her know like, hey, I love you. Like I would rather, my kids kind of see that side of things, especially my daughter. That way when some dusty ass little kid comes up, she's going to be like, oh man, he didn't even get me flowers for our date. He didn't even didn't even open the car door for me. She's going to be like, oh, this guy sucks. Like it's raising that expectation that she's going to have. And if, the boy doesn't meet that expectation, it's like, all right, that's a wrap. So it's like, I want to set her expectation up like that versus, I feel like if I don't do these things now and let her see how me and her mom are, she's going to fall for that bullcrap stuff where, she's 13, 14 years old later on or whatever age, and some kid that's just trying to get something and just trying to get in her pants and they're saying like, oh, I love you, we should go have sex, we should, da-da-da-da-da. She'll be like, why? Like, that ain't love. Like my dad and my mom, like what they show, that's love and affection. That's what it should be. Like, you ain't even like bought me no flowers. You haven't taken me out really. Like, you basically picked me up for prom and now you're expecting me, or homecoming, and you're expecting me to just give it to you like that. Like I want her to have like that high expectation of, nah, you got to earn it, so to speak. And then obviously, I want her to wait till marriage. But I mean, at the same time, I didn't wait till marriage. My wife didn't wait till marriage. All these things. I'm not saying it's impossible, but in today's day and age, I don't know. I'm not an idiot. Let's just put it that way. I'm not an idiot to what goes on. Like I work ER. I know how many times teenagers come into the ER with the clap and whatnot, or how many teen girls come in with nausea, vomiting, and they're 15 years old and they test positive on a pregnancy test. Like, I'm not an idiot. I've seen it. I know it's out there. So that's what I want to safeguard from, more so than the expectation of, oh, my daughter's going to wait till marriage. I'm like, the likelihood of that, I mean, granted that ideally is what I would like. Likelihood of that happening, not 100%. But the likelihood that maybe I can teach her enough to be safe and not get pregnant as a teenager and wait to do those kind of things and teach her, like, you don't have to do this. That's not how you show love and affection. This is how you show love and affection. That right there, to me, I can do that and prepare her in that way for certain. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be a choice on her, not on me. I'm just supposed to educate and guide her to make the right choice and set that expectation, so to speak. And then with my son, like, I want him to, I'll probably start doing it next year where, I'll give him some money and I'm like, hey, you need to take your mom out. And then let him take her out for, like ice cream or something where he, comes, gives her the flowers, he pays, like teach him how he should be as like a gentleman, So it's definitely two-sided, two coins to that, Obviously I can't teach my daughter to expect these things and then not teach my son to do these things. I mean, that would be very hypocritical in a way. But yeah, it's like, when you're teaching all these things and all these different aspects of life, a lot of people, they have someone they can go back to and talk to and just be like, hey, this is what I did. This is, what I've noticed. And unfortunately, I don't really have that. I don't have that that person that I can go to for those kind of things. So I'm still, as my whole life has been, pretty much, trying to stumble my way to success, as I always say. But so far, I feel like I'm doing a lot better than most. Not going to say I'm like, dad of the year, but I definitely know there's, dads out there that are way worse than I am, or just men in general that are way worse than I am. So I'm not leading the pack, but I'm definitely not at the bottom of the pack either. And there's still room for improvement, which is something I want to do. But with that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this video there. Like always, give the wife and kids hug, kisses, let them know you love them. Slap the old lady on the butt, let her know you love her, you still find her attractive, she still drives you crazy and all those things. Hopefully she ain't on her period when you do it like I am right now. Yeah, my wife just started and she told me today, so she's one of those that gets the cramps and all the things, so ain't no hanky-panky time while she's on hers. Usually it's maybe a little bit before or after, but definitely not the time of. She gets all the beastly symptoms. But with that, just have a good day and enjoy the time with the family.